So we know people are leaving the UK in record numbers, whether it's because of cost of living, a lack of opportunity, taxation, crime and safety concerns, that's a big one people are citing, the lack of societal cohesion now, just the general feeling, I've spoken about this a lot, of doom and gloom in the country now. People are getting out, they don't feel like it's a growth-minded environment, and frankly, I absolutely agree. But does that mean you, watching this, should leave Britain? Does that mean it's right for you to leave? Well, as somebody that's very recently done this, I'm going to give my take on this, and I'm going to give you the top things that I would consider if I was going back 6 months, 9 months, a year. These would be the things I'd be considering if I was starting from scratch with my relocation process. And honestly, the first thing I'd be thinking about here if I was relocating all over again is, yes, it's broken. Yes, the decline is real. I agree with the bullet point criticisms I've just given at the start of this video, but what is all the moaning and complaining worth if it doesn't lead to a practical solution in my life? This is what I'm hearing from a lot of folks inside the UK, admittedly my friends. I'm hearing this from these kinds of videos. I'm seeing this a lot online, is people moaning and complaining without it necessarily leading to any change or any action steps in their personal lives. And I just think, what is all that time, energy and stress complaining and worrying about the situation without actually doing anything? What is that worth, right? What's the cost of that? What does it actually lead to? And by the way, this doesn't mean you should leave the UK. Actually, the best thing for you to do perhaps might be to reconcile the UK's problems, even if it really, really hurts you, even if it feels very negative, but to reconcile and make peace with that and say, you know what, I'm going to max out every area of my life so I still have an amazing time, or as amazing time as I possibly can here. Let's say maybe there's a cap and a limit on this because of macro factors affecting British culture and the economy and whatnot right now, but still, I'm going to take care of business. I'm going to handle the areas of my life so I still have a great time here. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you should leave the UK, but my point being, right, what is all this complaining worth, and where is the boundary for when complaining becomes too much, or let's say futile because it doesn't actually lead to any change necessarily. And for me, even though I flirted with leaving the UK 5 or 6 years ago, it was only really in the last year or so where I fully started to mull over the decision to actually relocate properly, rather than just traveling lots, but to actually relocate properly. And then the wheel on that started turning very, very quickly. And once my gut was like, you need to go, right, you need to get out of here, actually, it was in motion very, very fast, and I made that decision quite quickly on where to come. Now, it's tricky because you want to be meticulous and you want to be thoughtful about, all right, where am I going to go? What's my plan? What if this goes wrong? Where's my safety net, etc., etc. So you don't want to rush this decision, absolutely, and I was very conscious of that. But at the same time, when I knew it was right, I was like, forward momentum, we need to go, enough complaining, let's make something happen. So whether you stay or whether you go, what is all the moaning worth? That's the first thing I'd be really careful with. Following on from that, a question that I'd be asking myself if I was to go back a year in time is, am I moving with intention or am I moving with escapism in mind? Escapism from me, my life and my problems, not necessarily Britain itself, any of the cultural or economic issues, but rather actually there are things that I'm not really taking care of about myself, whether it's health, whether it's career stuff that might actually be solvable in the UK. Financially, am I running away from bad habits of my own? Maybe a poor social life because I'm not putting much effort in. These are very crass, cliche examples, admittedly, but am I just trying to escape those things with a cliched trip to Southeast Asia, which I love, by the way, but this is actually a cliche that I see a lot in my age group, admittedly, my peer group. I'm speaking condescendingly towards people in my demographic here, but yeah, people going to Thailand and Bali, really when actually there's a bunch of things they need to fix in their lives, and does going to Thailand for 3 months necessarily address those things? You'll have a blast of a time. Doesn't necessarily address the things that are ultimately over the long term going to make you a much happier, healthier, fulfilled person. Perhaps not. And so for me, if I was going back a year, I'd be thinking, right, is this potential relocation, or even if it's just some longer term travel, is this actually something that's going to move the needle on any problems, any negative issues in my life? Is it actually going to do that? Or am I just trying to run away and thinking magically that I'll be a different person in a different location? Because I found after quite a bit of travel in recent years, well, it doesn't really work like that. And so are there opportunities and environments abroad where I will genuinely be happier and I can seize new exciting opportunities that will move the needle in my life? Or am I just running away from actually not Britain's problems, but mine, and I'm really just using all of this as a bit of copium to get away and to distract? Next insight, I'm just going to put this one bluntly. This will annoy some people because it's slightly impractical for a certain set of people, but if you haven't actually traveled that much, I honestly think you're in no position to assess where you should fully relocate to. And so I think it's impractical, isn't it? For the people that haven't traveled that much for one reason or another, that's not a judgment or a criticism, but if you haven't traveled that much in your life, I don't think you really are in a position to go, where would I be happiest? Where is good opportunity for me? And should I even leave the UK? Is that right for me? Am I a person that can deal with language barriers and different cultures? Can I handle that people think differently and systems are different elsewhere? Can I actually deal with that? Right? There's a lot of people that are very, very entitled and expectant of things being done the same way when they travel abroad as they are in their home country. And I think you have to be I see this when I'm out and about and I see tourists. Some of them I think, oh my goodness, how do you guys even survive abroad? Because you're so entitled and expectant of the same rules and same attitudes elsewhere in the world, and it simply doesn't work like that. You get a hard reality check on this stuff. So proverbially speaking, this is figurative, of course, if you haven't tasted that many food in your life, how do you know what your different types of food in your life, how do you know what your favorite type of cuisine is? If you haven't had Mexican and Indian food and whatever Vietnamese food, how do you know what you like and what you don't like? So if you haven't traveled much, but this is my terrible metaphor for this, but makes sense to me. If you haven't traveled all that much, how do you know where you could actually live? Never mind just a 3-day adventure, a 3-day holiday, but to actually live somewhere. That's why I really implore you to go and visit a place you are thinking about relocating to, which I'm smiling as I say this, giggling to myself, because for me this sounds so obvious, but people do this. Actually, I met someone last week here in Prague. I think, if I remember correctly, they certainly hadn't visited here before they decided to relocate here. I actually think, even more interestingly, they hadn't actually left their own country before deciding to move here, which I thought, wow, that's really bold. And incidentally, it's paid off for them, but you don't know how life would have paid off elsewhere. So brilliant, it's worked for them. But at the same time, I'm like, I would never personally do that. I would always go to a place, try and remove that gloss of a holiday. This is the other thing as well. I'd visit the place and I'd try and remove the veneer of, well, I'm here on holiday, I'm here on vacation, and actually think, no, what would it actually be? I'll go and see the attractions, I'll do the classic tourist stuff. What would it actually be like to live here? What's the culture truly like? How does this place work? And actually think about it from that perspective rather than, oh, this is an adventure, this is a trip. No, this is serious, right? We're talking about the rest of your life potentially, certainly years commitment at least. Would you actually be happy living here? Would this actually work for you? Would there be opportunity here? Oh, it's got a really nice temple. No. What would it be like living here? You're not going to see the temple every week. The next thing I'd consider very strongly before making my decision to leave Britain is it's still home. And I would be under no illusion about that. It's still where my family are, and it's still where my friends are, and it's still nostalgic for me, and it's still my people. And I'm still going to be able to communicate with them better than other cultures around the world, because the hive mind, right? We've all grown up together in the same culture, using the same lingo, thinking in a very, very similar way with similar attitudes. And you're not going to get, that doesn't mean you can't connect with other incredible cultures around the world, but you don't get anything quite like your own people, is my experience from being fortunate enough to travel a lot in the last year or two, especially. And so, don't get me wrong, you can have an incredible life abroad. This is what we do. I'm not being a hypocrite. I am so glad I've made the decisions I have. And I do not feel such an allegiance to my country that it is on some kind of pedestal to the extent that I would feel guilty or unpatriotic, like I was not a patriot for leaving if I felt it was in my and my family's, my future family's best interest to do so. I don't think that is treason to the motherland. I don't. I think you can cut to the chase, I think you can have an amazing life abroad, but it is still home. And that plane touches down at Heathrow, and as much as my criticisms for what life in Britain has become, and as much as those criticisms grow and compound rather with each passing year, and each hour, day, week of time I spend abroad and feel really, really good about that decision, feel validated by that decision, as much as that criticism about life in Britain grows, basically, it still is home. I get to Heathrow and I'm immediately stressed and I'm like, nothing works here anymore. There is such a pessimism and a doom and gloom here. But it's still where my friends are, it's still where my family are, and it's still immensely nostalgic for me. It's still home, it's still my people. And I still love it, and I am patriotic, and I still feel very connected, as I say, to the motherland. And so I think that's something worth keeping in mind is, I really believe you can have an incredible life elsewhere, and it's not to say you won't feel at home elsewhere, but when you go back to the UK, you do have just this, I have this immense sense of, yeah, this is it, I'm with my people now, this is it, and there's nothing quite like that. Maybe it's the comfort zone, maybe it's familiarity, maybe it's an overly emotional nostalgia I'm feeling there, but I feel it, so it's real to me. I experience it, it's real to me. That's the connection, that's the association I have, for better or worse, rightly or wrongly. So yeah, I'd be under no illusions about that. And obviously some cultures are going to be more welcoming and accepting, and you need to do your bit and be respectful and ingratiate very sensibly as well, of course. But some cultures are, yeah, like I say, they're going to be accepting, but others, you're still going to be gaijin. Like, they might be very nice to you, but you're still, gaijin, you're still going to be foreigner, the Japanese term for foreigner. You're still not necessarily going to be one of them. Next thing, people don't want to hear this, but I'm here to give my honest take on this stuff. You might be here for the Broken Britain title, you might enjoy criticisms of the UK, you might only want to hear the bad stuff because you're thinking about leaving yourself. But honestly, the UK, I'm using Britain and the UK very interchangeably here, probably wrongly, well, certainly wrongly, but anywho, the UK is still best in class in many, many categories, and I think this is something that the Broken Britain tirades, a lot of these videos, do actually neglect. I know why, because we're all really distracted by the decline in whatever it is, infrastructure and culture and the economy. Like, we're all distracted with that stuff, but still I feel the UK is best in class in many ways, and I think it would be hasty, and I think it would be a mistake to only make your decision on the bad stuff. This is so obvious, but this is not, like, when people are frustrated by something, they don't play devil's advocate enough. And so all I would say is, simultaneously, you need to hold your criticisms of the decline in standards, infrastructure, life generally in the UK, but also say, you know what, these things are still brilliant in the UK, and I still like these things about the UK. It needs to be weighted, and if your decision is still, I've got to get out of here, then you know the cons outweigh the pros of staying. Next one, excuse me, I wrote some of these on my phone here when I knew I was recording this video. This is actually a reason why you should not leave the UK. So if you kind of start nodding your head at this one, this might be something that rightly dissuades you from actually leaving the UK so hastily. But you, admittedly, have a bit of a grass is always greener mentality. Have you historically, let's just be honest here, let's be self-aware, have you historically, and I know all about this one, have you historically had a bit of a silver bullet mentality where you're always looking for the next magic pill, the next thing that's going to change your life, when actually the life change you're looking for is probably something internal? And so just be careful with this grass is always greener thing. And again, I think I sort of covered this. There's a lot of overlap here with whatever it was, tip number 2, or thought number 2 that I gave to you towards the start of this video, which is move with intention and not escapism. Am I doing this for the right reasons? Am I just chasing some kind of illusion here? Is it reality? Will I really be a better person? Will I really feel happier about myself abroad? Or do I actually need to fix something here? And then if living somewhere else in the world complements my life, maybe it's a cherry on the cake because I've sorted out the other stuff in my life, wonderful, fantastic, I should rightly consider that. But yeah, just beware, like, do you have a bit of a grass is always greener mentality? Have you noticed this with jobs or girlfriends in the past? Just be so careful with this. Again, this is, I know I'm being maybe so cautious, and this is not attractive, and it's not that motivational. I'm not necessarily saying, yeah, you can leave the UK, guys, you can do it. I'm not geeing you up in this regard, which maybe would be a slightly more entertaining video. But I just think this is the realities of living abroad, leaving the UK, that I think you really need to consider before doing so hastily. And another reason why you should not leave the UK, and I see this a lot with the aspiring nomad types, and I'm such a nomad. I'm such a sort of remote worky person, obviously. I've been doing that for a long time now, over half a decade. I've been doing stuff online for myself. But I see this especially with people that are still on the come up and they're not as established and that secure financially with remote work or freelancing, whatever it is, the nomad stuff. Don't do this without savings. You know, have some cash in reserve, and a good amount of it. Of course, it depends where you're going in the world in terms of like what would be a good safety net financially, but have some cash in reserve. And that's even more important if you don't have income lined up. right? So if you don't have that next job, or if you don't have, or you're in a period with you're starting to do the self-employed stuff, you've started an online business, whatever it might be, and you don't maybe have, or you're in a quiet period, you don't have that many clients coming in yet. Well, it's even more important in that scenario that you have lots of savings lined up. I can definitely say, hand on heart, to be honest, that I've traveled in periods in my life where I didn't have quite enough cash in reserve, and that could have been really, really hairy for me. Some close calls in that regard. Some stories that I'll be happier to tell you down the line anyway, when they're further in my past, about sort of traveling with only X amount of money in my bank account. But I've got some interesting stories about that stuff. But yeah, don't make that mistake, obviously, and especially if, as I say, if you don't have the income lined up. And as we're coming to a close here, folks, lastly, I realise I've issued a lot of warnings here, like this is why you should not leave the UK, think twice about this, and what about this, X, Y, Z. I've done a lot of devil's advocate, to the extent that it probably sounds like I almost am trying to dissuade people from leaving the UK. I really think the way I've thought about this video is I want to do so much devil's advocate that it's almost like a test. So you can go through this video, you can hear all of my arguments from my personal story and go, that doesn't bother me. Oh, that's fine, I can live with that, Ryan. That's fine. And then you know, if you say no, if you bat away every criticism about leaving the UK that I've given here, if you can just smash those things away and go, no, I don't think that's a problem for me, actually, you know that it's probably right for you to leave. And so I think that's how I thought about this video and planning is, I want to do all the devil's advocate stuff, because it can sound really hypocritical, because here's somebody whose channel and whose very life recently has been about leaving the UK and getting set up elsewhere and documenting that journey. And I'm almost sounding like I'm dissuading, like, here's why you shouldn't leave. Like, it sounds so hypocritical, doesn't it? But really, I think I'm just trying to be meticulous. Whatever right I have to help you with this decision. I don't want to overinflate my role in your journey. You're going to make your decision. But I think that's how I've thought about this video. It's like, let's go through all the reasons why you shouldn't leave. And if you don't care about any of them, go. And I think that's my final piece of advice. Don't be naive. Don't rush this decision, but if you know this is right to pull the trigger, and all of the downsides that me and other people share from their story about leaving the UK don't really resonate with you that much, or they certainly don't resonate to the extent that they outweigh the reasons why you feel like you ought to leave, go, make it happen. Don't dilly-dally. So I've done all of this cautious Ryan, I've worn my cautious Ryan hat in this video, but ultimately, if you're not bothered about all of the stuff I've said be cautious about, time to go. Time to get out. Just don't be under any illusion. Don't have false expectations. Don't be under any illusion this is like going to be a full-time holiday or vacation for you. Don't think, well, I'm going to go to a really cheap part of the world so I don't have to worry about my finances. No, be careful with that kind of thing. Just don't fall into the traps that I've covered here, basically, is what I would suggest. If you also can reconcile that actually, if you have some problems in your personal life right now, this is not profound, but people do this, they don't magically disappear when you move to Bali next month. If you can temper all of that stuff and make sure you're doing this from what feels like the right considered place for you, go, pull the trigger. And like I said with the first point, stop complaining. I love my country, but it's become a nation, as I said in a couple of videos ago, it's become a nation of complainers. We're a nation of moaners. Moan, moan, moan. We're so pessimistic without taking any action. And you need to call stuff out, and it's right to feel frustrated about things that are going wrong. But if that doesn't lead to any positive change, what's the point in getting emotional about stuff and investing all that time, energy, and concern into things if you're not driving it to positive change? So either you stay in the UK and you attempt to fix the UK, or you attempt to fix your life, or you leave because these things bother you so much that you feel it's right for you and your family to get the heck out. Whatever the decision is, pull the trigger on it. I love the UK. I do, and I want to add this in, disclaimer, I do love my country. I've said it throughout, and I do hope, sincerely, that it makes the comeback that we all universally, collectively want to see. I feel bleak, to be honest, that it's nowhere close, that it's anywhere close to that. So that's why I've personally decided to kind of close my chapter with Britain for now. And I'm going to continue to report, what's working for me, what I like and dislike about my relocation here. So if you enjoy this stuff, drop me a subscribe, and I'll keep you up to date. Okay, talk soon. Questions down below. Thank you.